But then there is the wonderful birth of children. There's this, I won't give you the Yoruba because in Yoruba it's poetic. It's a use of language. It says, it says to give birth to a child is to refuse evil. To give birth to a child is to push evil. Ibi mo bi ibi. To push. You push it. To give birth to a child is to resist evil. Birth is this wonderful tool that God gave us. And that's why I believe it had to be a woman's, because it's such a wonderful gift. The ability to bring into life more life. And it says all Orisha, which is key to this conversation at this time in life. All Orisha are pro-life champions. I will say that again. All Orisha are pro-life champions. They not only oppose what they call Ishehun, abortion, and miscarriage. What they say Ishehun, it says distress pregnancy, because anyway, too many stories. The point being, sometimes if it's inappropriate to be pregnant, women know ways of distressing the pregnancy, which causes abortion. As a priest, I cannot be part of that. No priest can, actually. Just like the Orisha are pro-life, we must be pro-life. But there's a big but in that. It says, but we must support women's rights to control their bodies. This is centuries old. Don't ask, don't tell. We were talking about this many years ago, and it came up. It says, no, we are pro-life. We can, matter of fact, we cannot even advise a woman or a man. If they came, they said, oh, it's not appropriate for us to have this child for whatever reason. However the child gets here, there is no being that does not have an Orisha. We have a saying, every person has an Orisha that dances like the person can dance. When you're young and vigorous, there's Orisha for that. They dance with vigor. When you're old, you dance like an old person. There are Orisha that dance specific ways. When you are crippled, there are Orisha that dance like cripples. So that you say, oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. Eshu dances 1 foot because he had poliomyelitis. So that he dances, you see him hopping on 1 foot. If you think of Porgy and Bess, Porgy was a cripple. He was an Eshu character, which God, that's a whole nother story about. We wonder where he got that inspiration from, because that is definitely African in its base. Anyway, let's not go there. The point being, children who have waterheads, in other words, if the child arrives in this world, we are by mandate required to help it live as long as it can. That is, as a priest, I cannot say, oh, if the child dies, that's something else. Then I tell this story, people forget there was a very famous singer. I think he's still alive, man. He might be dead. I hope I'm not putting him in this ground beforehand. Twin 77. People didn't figure out what his name meant. Twin 77. He was the only surviving child of 7 sets of twins. Think about that. That's 14 children, 13 of which died in birth or before they got to be a year. He was the only survivor of 14 children, and those were not the only children his mother had. So that I've written about this. Think of the mindset of those women that had, because infant mortality among the Yoruba was sometimes as much as 40 to 40, in some cases 50%, depending. Why? Because so many malaria, testy fly, all the things that can go wrong. So that when you have 2 out of 5, 40%, when you have 3 out of 5, whatever, when you have up to sometimes 50%, if you had 6 children, 6 births, 3 of them died. They didn't even bury those. They were considered not to have even come into the world. You have to adjust your society based on the realities of what's happening. Why? Because if not, everybody's going to be insane. And your women are going to damn sure be insane. I can't even imagine the mind of a woman who lost that many children and continue to have hope that God would give her. And there's so many songs and please, so that you see these little these places in culture that talk about God and God's and the hope in God, the faith in God, that God's going to deliver your children to you, that your children are going to live to be old and bury you. That's every culture. Because people go, you study this, you find out how many places the United States, with its wonder and all this medical, Cuba has a better infant mortality survival rate than here. And they talk, oh, please, we want to talk about, and that's with a blockade. So you have to consider how many places you think this is modern society and that many children are dying and not being, depending on you're in the wrong category, your kids might not stand the same chance of survival. So all of that is part of this thinking that the idea of the wonder and the faith in childbirth. All right, people say, oh, why? Because women say, I want to have children. There's a song that says, I want to feel little hands on my breasts as they drink milk. So that this idea of these little hands, I think of my youngest son. I wrote a poem about him. I said, you know something? You get to a certain age and you realize, where is that little hand I used to hold? Because that's, you miss that touch of your children when they were, because I don't have any more children that age anymore. He's a man. You kidding? But you have to. I acknowledge that, at least in this poem. It was about he's off becoming a man. That little child that I used to walk with and have, and my other children, I used to walk when their hands was, I used to swallow their hands. Those children. Well, that is this idea that birthing is to dispel evil, to push it, to all the words that we say, push, to push, that you push it, you resist it, you refuse it. That's what our children mean. It's not, that's why it's so serious a position that even though I cannot, and that's the other issue, why a child in any form has to be sacred in our culture. And so that these arguments that are now flying in the news, there's only one side I can be on. I have to be on the woman's side, because my attitude is this: yes, I'm opposed to abortion, because all life is sacred. All life is sacred. But you have the right to your life, your body. You have to, and that cannot be legislated away that I can't, I'm a priest, right? So you have to do, no. Those applications do not apply here. Why? Because I can tell you what the policy is. Okay, here's cultural policy. Cultural policy is all life is sacred. If it gets here, we have to find a way to keep it as long as possible, keep it in the best way possible. But I can't tell you what to do. All right? I can advise you. I cannot make you. I can only tell you, here's what it is. Now, because free will and decision, and free will is not, that didn't come up out of Judeo-Christian thinking. So it's the idea that, no, that's her body. And if she's the portal, what right do I have to tell her? So that becomes a dynamic here. And I added this little point because it was important. Why? Because Orisha are pro-life in all forms. Liberty and the pursuit of goodness for mothers, their children, husbands, and families. It doesn't make sense that you say, oh, you gotta have that kid, and the kid lives like a dog, or the family now is in, because certain things are beyond, you can't see, as Robbie the Robot said in Forbidden Planet, he says, can you see around corners? And he says, no, only through them. Well, we can't see around corners sometimes. You can't see what's coming down the block. You can't see where this line of thinking is going to take you and the results. And that is a dilemma that we haven't quite figured out. And I say we because those people that make laws and think they understand, and it's all politics and foolishness, but that's another story. All right. Mothers, children, their families, they are first of all adversaries of the Ajogun, the warriors against mankind, death, disease, tragedy, loss, etc. We're all against that. So it makes it seem strange that you say, well, no, what do you think? The mother wants to die or wants to have her children die? No, it's just that if we weigh this thing in the wrong direction, we give entry to those forces. And then we might have opened Pandora's box, which we'll see if they're not that smart and do that. You got to tell me the time, because I don't know where I'm at, and doesn't matter to me. Oh, it's only, okay, we got time. Okay, Iwa. I'm just going through this because I wrote this stuff. That said, if you don't cover some of this stuff, people, because I can go in the wrong direction, and believe me, that wouldn't be well. Existence. That's what Iwa means. People think Iwa the other way, it means the other direction. The other, when you accent it the other way, it means character, but it's existence. Iwa, and this Iwa is existence. It says existence is created from the energy generated by the interaction of binary twins. Who are the binary twins? Life and death, light and dark, hot and cold, fast and slow, male and female, etc. Reincarnation. I gave you the Yoruba here, but that's for me. Which is selecting and putting on a new body to exist again. Or there's other ways of translating that. Born again with a new body is a major contributor to the energy of existence. People, from the Orisha point of view, the Yoruba point of view, Orisha, that's a better term because it covers bigger ground. The very coming and going of spirit is a major component of existence. It's like changing, what is the guy? Changing base metal into gold takes a lot of energy, if it's at all possible. The point being, that's where, if you want to know how much of existence, from the Yoruba point, that this idea of going from one reality to another reality, another state of being to another state of being, and then coming back and going forward, that takes a lot. So that reclaiming spirit, which is a whole nother story. Put it this way, so that we don't get too people try. Sometimes people call pygmies, people of the Ituri forests, some of the oldest people on the planet after the sun. They have so many words for death. It says, oh, he's dead. And it means you have to think about it, because people say this all the time. Man, I'm dead on my feet. Oh man, oh God, I feel dead. They don't mean that they're dead. So that for the pygmy, they say, then there's death, and then there's dead, and there's dead. There's so many degrees of dead until the guy said, no, now he's dead. That means he ain't coming back. That final phase is almost like turning off the heart graft, the machine that keeps you alive. It's realizing beyond resuscitation. Up to a certain point, there are methods of calling spirit back. Okay? The last rites I don't know, I know in the Catholic Church, what they call extreme unction. I believe that's extreme unction. Yeah, the last rites. Under certain circumstances, that's the last chance to recall the spirit. That for some cases, person gets up and walks away. It's like, quote, miracle, but it's not. Well, it is, except it's this idea of degrees of transition and how much energy is required to call it back. My teacher, I had a boyhood friend. He lived downstairs. There were 8 people in the family, 8 children. And we all grew up together and blah, blah, blah. And Albert, his nickname was Keita. Don't ask me what it meant. Nobody, to this day, nobody knows. He had leukemia. And he was the only person I knew of that age, of that time, who had, and he was a great athlete. And he would go to the hospital. He'd go over to Fifth Avenue, Flower Fifth Avenue, and be in the hospital. We'd come and visit him. Everybody would pile over. And I went to my teacher and I said, Chris, I want to try and save this guy. So Chris, he said, okay, Tiger. He called it either Tiger or Champ. Tiger. Will this person, if you save him, will he convert to become an Orisha person? No. Why would he do that? If he gave me about three, will he even acknowledge that it was that saved him? No. Every answer he asked, every question he asked, I gave him a no answer. So at the end, he said, well, fuck him. Just like that. And I was like, it actually hurt me. I mean, because it was so matter of fact. He went down this list, and it was like, fuck him. Not screw him, not later for him, fuck him. And I'm like, and he saw that I was upset. He saw that he really touched the button with that. And I said to him, he said, Tiger, stop. He said, I need you to think about this. That's why I said it that way. You're going to ask death and sickness to spare him for what? What are you showing these two entities? Did the guy pay you? Is this a professional job? In other words, you're a diviner. Diviners do it. We step in sometimes, a lot of times. But the reason there are rules, you show them the money, even where it's placed and all that stuff. And the whole point is, I'm not a pain in the ass, as the guy said in The Godfather. I'm not a pain in the ass, innocent bystander, sticking my nose into somebody else's business. This is what I do. Here is the reason I'm doing it. I'm getting paid for this, yada, yada, yada. There's all of this that's implied in this process. This is just not, I want to be a good guy. This is my friend. Because I just finished a story. Matter of fact, no, that's in the next book. I'm thinking, did I give the illustrators these stories? No, there's 3 books. Anyway, the point being, this is a very famous story. And death, in the end, death said, it's what we call switching heads. Sometimes there's an alternate. Hey, you do this, you give this thing, this will take you. So there's all kinds of there's ways that you can switch ahead. Your head, their head, whatever. All right. Sometimes, again, you see people get old. You say, damn. And the person said, there was this woman. She said, she asked, take me. She got tired of living. She was that old. All her friends were dead. Everything. She said, and she kept. It was not even funny, but the way she said it, I keep getting no's. In other words, no, it ain't time for you. We'll let you know when it's time. This is God talking, so to speak. So it's like, son of a bitch, I'm ready. But God wasn't ready. You understand what I'm saying? So this was what my teacher pointed out. He says, are you willing to change heads with this kid, with this guy, your friend? I said, no. He said, well, fuck him. He went back to that, because that was like, period. You understand what I'm telling you here? That you cannot just stick your face in here. This is not your business. Now you're being nosy because you're not getting paid for this. This is you trying to be a good guy, and you think you're going to save your friend from all. It's like, come on. And in the end, he's not even going to say thank you. He won't even know you did it. And he damn sure won't acknowledge it. You pagan. Well, that would be his family and everybody. They would. So you're going to say that this is you? So it says no. Sometimes you got to let God do God's work, and God's agents. Because remember, death works for God. Well, death works with God. God, whatever you want to say. The point is that these are forces that are, as long as there's existence, these things are in play. That's all there is. Now, it doesn't mention it I call them the cultures of the book. They talk about it in very strange ways. It's like the angel of death only saved, it didn't fuck with their houses. Yeah, right. You believe that? I'll sell you 2 houses. I'll sell you 2 bridges. That's the joke. Because that's not even physically possible. Okay? Now, tell me you had medicine that helped you because you knew what, wow, my neighbors. Tell me you had medicine that helped you safeguard against it. But that's not even mentioned. It's saying that somehow you were magically, you put this sign on your door and that meant the angel passed your house. We have a similar tradition, but it doesn't quite mean that. Okay? So that, again, these ideas are not germane to just one group. There are ways in which it's the same way they're talking about COVID now. You got to get the vaccine, put, you know, if that's the case, put a hypodermic in your window. Let people know, hey, I've been vaccinated. But basically, it's this process that is about salvation. Salvation becomes the issue here. And I want to just get to the end of this. No, investigative scrap of Hunter. Okay, matter can either be, and we already did that. It always was. Good. We are informed in the Urdu. We don't need that. It just, see, because it tells you where I always put where these ideas are encapsulated, where they're stated, and the environment, because that's anyway. It's about key to understanding where in the Bible. That's the best way of putting it. So is this in Genesis, or is it in Deuteronomy, or what? Where is it? Because that means something different than if it were in Revelations. All right, because that's a whole nother place, and it's like, oh, that doesn't mean the same thing. So it's the same issue in these places of knowledge. It says, okay, here, this is where this statement comes from. This is where this idea comes from, and it expands because that's the nature. It's very few, I could say. Matter of fact, as my teacher used to point out, certain conversations, he said you could fill the room, you could fill the house with priests. They wouldn't know what the hell we're talking about. Why? Because we're not in Kansas anymore. We're talking now calculus, when everybody's still working with you know, whole numbers or some shit or something, because it's you have to step off and look from a different perspective at what we're talking about, and the universe, the world we're looking at. That's in some of these places that we're talking about. So that this idea that it talks about the investigative, when they say fa, to scrape, but it's not the last method where you scrape on the powder, on the termite dust. It's scraping to see what kind of wood that is, what kind of medicine that is, what kind of earth. In Georgia, I remember this guy, my father said, certain farmers, they take a hand of dirt, they would smell it, they would taste it, they could tell you every damn thing that would grow in that dirt. They could tell just from the smell of it, the feel of it, and the taste of it, what would grow and what wouldn't grow in that soil. They were that in tune with what they did, with the earth, with the farming that they did, so that they knew this will work here, this won't work here, this won't grow here. It'll grow, but it won't be that good. So that is part of this process. It's knowing, hey, what can we do? What is possible here? So the investigative scrape of the hunter. We have to always go back to primordial man trying to figure out, how do I eat? How do I survive? Which way do I go? Is this good to eat? Is this not good to eat? You watch animals, you watch the world around you to inform you of what God's plan is, because that's the real issue here. It's about, this whole system is based on, it's basically, you better watch to see if that animal eats that and lives. Rats, I just finished a book of rats, all rat tails. I'm serious. People are like, I'm waiting to see this book. Anyway, these are all true stories. Rats, you put food and poison. The rats, which are tribal, they're tribal animals, clans, they send Joey, go eat that. They watch Joey. Joey eats it. Now, Joey don't die right away, so you got to make the poison long. If Joey dies too close to that, they come and pee on the. That means don't eat this. You see, it killed Joey. So, an exterminator gave me this history 100 years ago. They have to make slow-acting poisons that make them burst blood vessels, make them have to drink, so they drives them out of the house. They have to find water sources. But they use test specimens. Joey, go eat the food. Now, if Joey survives a couple of days, they're going to kill a bunch of rats, because they lose track of what killed us. Well, this is here too. This idea of the investigative scrape of the hunter helps to uncover and direct consciousness. Spectacular, grand places, Mount Fuji, Grand Canyon, etc., promote consciousness and are separate from the mundane. Bada bing. Oh, I'm losing track. It is something, art or someone so beautiful as to seem unreal, otherworldly, godly. Orisha represents specific / particular sites that promote consciousness. We create shrines to capture, maintain, and reflect that grandness. Miracles and magic promote consciousness. Rainbows are an illusion caused by a trick of light, quote, magic. Egungun, ancestor masqueraders, are walking rainbows. That's why all the colors. This idea of continuity, the rainbow, and this predates the Christian thinking of that at the end of the flood. No, it's the idea that this idea of incorporating all these colors from this magical semen-like drop of water, because that's what rain is. It's like semen coming down, impregnating the land. Well, but it's every type of, look at all the colors of the rainbow. It's all of these, it's the spectrum of life that it represents. And this idea that it spans the horizon, or it goes from one point that we can designate to a point we can't understand. Where is that ending? The end of the rainbow, all that, the pot of gold. How many cultures come up with this idea? Well, where is it? And there must be something valuable at the end of that. Well, all of this is part of Orisha thinking too, because Oshumari, the rainbow is a major figure. Bada boom, bada boom, bada boom, bada boom. Pools of water and mirrors reflect images magically to show an unreal, real world. Magic counters, frustrates, causing the magician to seemingly have performed magic. A diviner, which again, this idea of what they call approché it's versed in esoteric knowledge. That's our woe. But it also means somebody versed in awomi, because there are many ways of seeing that. Some people can look at water. I'll give you, for instance, people forget in a lot of churches, a lot of Black churches especially, they tell you, go see Sister Anderson, whatever her name. Why? Because when she prays for you, it works. Some people can pray all freaking day. It wouldn't mean a goddamn thing. It's like, yeah, right. Other people, they pray for you, or they pray something does happen to you. Yeah, oye, espérate, oye, cuídate. Because some people, I told somebody, I was born with this. Yeah, I said, no, I don't. I have to watch. There are a couple of things I have to be careful. I have to monitor my own self. It's like, no, leave that. And as I get older, it's like, please, you have to really, really, I told somebody, unless you get in my way, really get in my way, then we have, look, it's like, forget it. I don't have time for this shit. I got things to do. Why? Because it's a waste of energy at this point. When I was younger, I didn't mind wasting energy. Okay, so, but you learn, and I was told, and I know from just practical experience, certain things you got to, no. My mother used to say in Spanish, "Cállese pico." It says, shut your beak. Certain things, no, don't say that. Don't say that. Why? Because, how would I put this? My mouth is sacred. What I say tends to come true. So it's like, no. Why? Because it can't be, it can't be, like a kid. I'm pissed. And so, no. You got to be more controlled, sedate. So all of this is implied here, that afoshe, it says, versed in esoteric knowledge. That's our woke. Pero, I'm telling you Spanish. Versed in seeing ancient knowledge contained in water. That's our womi. But it also uses, it's the use of wisdom, knowledge, and command. All of that is what divination implies. I used to teach, I began in '86. I used to teach other diviners, and some secretly, because the Babalawo would come and they thought it didn't look right that they were taking lessons from a Babalorisha. It doesn't matter. It's the same system of knowledge. And it's all based on whether you can remember, whether you know or you don't know, or whatever. But politics, it plays a role in everything. So, but the reality becomes one of things that I know now after 50 years. It's almost like, it's like tying your shoe. You don't even think about it. It's there. Others, my teacher used to say, Chris used to say, the point of departure. So you divine for somebody. You have all this information in front of you. Where do you start? Where do you start telling this story that's meaningful? It's not just, just start rambling. No. That's why I wrote a basic outline, because I know me. I can do this shit all day. The point being, okay, for this, I'm trying to channel certain information. So it's like, okay, set a course for yourself. So you just don't, because I can go, believe me, I can go all day long. So it's like, my wife said once, she said, yeah, right, 2 hours. I told her, I said, I'm going to be only about an hour. She said, yeah, right. She said, did he offer you food? That's her. Hey, that's because Anyway, so we already did that, counterpunching. Okay, of all the weapons, we're almost there. Of all the weapons employed in the counterpunching of the transcultural war being waged by Africans in the Americas, art has proven to be the most offensively effective. African art can be argued to be the fundamental springboard for all significant innovation in Western art in the past 3 centuries. Ask Bob if you don't believe me. But Bob said, he says, damn it. And we would anyway, a lot of, you miss certain conversations, but what can you do? This is unquestionably true of African music, with Yoruba and Congo music leading the vanguard. African metaphysical philosophy focuses on the shifting, deep understanding of the nature of the divine spirit and power, Olodumare, and its countless fractal shadows that are identified as Orisha. And when I say countless, there are so many forms of Orisha. I was telling these artists that are working for me, I'm introducing them. Matter of fact, I'm having one artist he might be a little angry because he thought he was finished with the first of these next series of drawings. And when I thought about it, I said no. And I first I didn't even think, and I said, there's items missing that cannot be left out of this contemplation in his art. So it's like, and again, it's because of unfamiliarity. He's too young, and he hasn't done enough homework. And I you know, you don't want to sort of ask somebody who I'm paying, hey, how many of my books do you have? Because you need to. They came to the house. I took some books from the library downstairs, which I never do. I very rarely do books, I believe, here, because I have books that are worth a lot of money. So I never, but this time I had to have this meeting. They needed to see a range of art, and I gave them the same images I showed you, but I also showed them work by this very famous Brazilian artist, Caribe. Caribe, he was a painter, a sculptor. Oh my God. Yeah, if you look him up and you see his work in Bahia, it's in a museum now, but it used to be in a bank. He did 9-foot carvings of Orisha. Completely insane. Beautiful, beautiful. And I have 2 of his major works here. And I forgot he had signed them. He says, "Oh, you got this?" And he signed, he drew a figure and everything. Very beautiful person. Anyway, he has studies that are so insightful that when you see that somebody has seen what you've seen, now, I'll never know because he's on the other side, if he even knew what he recreated. I called Henry. There's an issue with this Orisha Yewa. And there's certain Orisha that there's no way that they could know that. It's because the information is so specific. And unless you have really a depth, that's as simple as that. There's certain constructs that people say, well, what is that? And when you see certain imagery, certain items that are part of shrines, and they don't have a clue as to why that's there. They see it, but it's like Chris used to say, you can't see his paint. When you come to the house, you're going to see all his paint. You'll see the art, the art. You see his oil paintings. Frankenstein is right here with his wife. on my wall, right, facing my bed. My wife said, "How do you sleep with that in your room?" No, somebody else said that. He said, "How do you sleep with that in the room?" I said, "The question is, how would I sleep with it out in the room?" That spirit came to me when I was about 10 years old, long before I knew anything about Chris or anything about Orisha. That spirit came to me. That spirit, okay? And then when I was about 18, I go to Chris's house. He says, "Go up to the front and get this." I went past, and there's the without the frame, the paintings on the wall over his bed. And I'm like, "Oh, shit." I started talking to the picture. I said, "Where you been all this time?" And I made him promise. I said, "If you ever give that painting away or sell it, you must give me first dibs." He gave away a room full of paintings, a fortune in paintings. I mean, millions of dollars in paintings he gave away. He gave away about 40, 50 paintings. And we talking about, yeah, when you come to the house, you'll see, because we talk about big paintings. And so the guy who was framing it, Frank said he was a master framer, and he, Puerto Rican brother, beautiful guy. Frank said, "There's a lot of paint on those canvases." He said, "Where'd you get all these paintings from?" I said, "Don't worry, Frank, I didn't steal them." He said, "My God." He was in Fort Myers. Because he took my stuff down. Valerie said, my wife said, "You didn't get a receipt?" I said, "Frank's not a thief." How would I put this? I have a strange, certain people. Look, if I worried about Frank, those pictures would have never left my house. He would have never come. But I said, "Frank's not a thief." And all the except for the last one, there was a big 6-foot painting of the two lovers, never came back. Frank died, because that's why it didn't come back. So somebody in Fort Myers is got this massive Germanic draw of these two, the aftermath after a love affair. Anyway, but here's the point. Of all the weapons, okay, we got to that unquestionably true of African music. All right, Olodumare, we got fractal shadows. That was my dear friend, Milford Graves. He said, "You know what fractals?" He's probably up there in heaven bugging people about fractals. Milford Graves was probably he turned Miles Davis down. Miles wanted him to join his band. Milford said no. I said, "You turned Miles down?" He said, "Yep." It was going, because he was going in a different direction. Matter of fact, I heard him the last time he played here, and they charged $20. This little place here in Brooklyn, and I'm $20. It used to be 10. And I said, "Shucks." If it wasn't Milford, I wanted to see him. I had a portrait of him, national, because I'm not bad when it comes to portrait. I had people said, "Damn." I gave him the portrait. But I heard I've known the man 50 years by that time. And I'm thinking, because I studied with Milford, how to write percussion music without using Western notation. He had a whole method and everything. Anyway, the point being, I couldn't hear his music for a long time. It was like, I heard it the last time I heard him play. I said, "Oh shit, I hear it. I know where he's at." And I told him, I said, "You know, after all these years, I finally heard you." He said, "I told you." I told you. That was it. That was the answer. I told you. He was just a brilliant person. Anyway, enough of see, that's the way you go off the track. All right. It focuses on the shifting, deep understanding of the nature of divine spirit and power, Olodumare, and its countless fractal shadows that are identified as Orisha. African music employs and exploits the counterpointal rhythmic relationships of group tonal patterns that are fractal, self-similar is the best word. I think I'm at the end. Oh yeah, I am. One more, and I'm almost done. Damn, I did it all in one night. Small parts that look like the whole. Orisha music continues this classical tradition of dispersing and expounding upon fixed and recurring God-generated themes that embody, I'm losing light here, embody cultural ideals that values central to the lives and values central to the lives of the people. I just want to make one thing here. The Negro spiritual, born of West African music traditions, with its call and response, profound theological theme of salvation through deliverance from slavery and oppression by agents of death, disease, loss, etc., uses repetition of incremental alliteration as a memory device. The words tell stories about the friends we have in Jesus, or the friend we have in Jesus. I was thinking about this because it says, oh, what a friend we have in Jesus. And you know something, the only reason WBGO has this thing on about, and they do Come Sunday, and oh, believe me, oh God, we used to go to a Baptist church every other, Valentine's Day, they used to have the Valentine teas and things. And the food was delicious because my neighbors and their 4 daughters went. So we track up to the Bronx to go hang out and eat and listen. And then Johnny played an organ and a piano that was just out of sight. But I've sort of outgrown that. And in my musical world, I have a couple of operas that I've written that I'm saying, I was calling this woman, Reggie Workman's daughter, actually, Nyoka Workman. She's a fabulous cellist. And I'm trying to put together another string section. The reality of doing sacred music in the real world now has become one that there's almost no sacred music that is directly linked to African sensibilities. So that we're getting ready to do some things here. Because music for me is like, I have to turn the aircraft carrier, because it ain't a battleship. I have to actually finish I have a bunch of projects that will terminate the end of this year, hopefully. I have 4 more books that have to come out, these illustrated books. But somewhere near the end, we're gonna put together a couple of what they call chamber presentations. We did one at the Open Center that people just went crazy because people were crying. They were like, damn, it's Orisha classical music with a septet. So it's a string section of 3 or 4 people, can be a septet or octet, because we have a full string section, cello, viola, violin, and if we can get the bass player is, forget, anyway, she's just great. And then a full rhythm section, all right, piano, bass, I'm percussion, and Ayodele plays mandolin and guitar. But generally in this setup, when we have a full string section, he plays mandolin because he's genius shit. So we did this, and you have to hear it. You have, when you come out, I'll have listen, let you listen to some. We did some of it's recorded. But here, this idea of the friend we have in Jesus, all of these tunes have their counterparts in Orisha music, so that it delivers the unspoken message with mankind so often hateful and disapproving and disappointing. What other hope do we have but God and her agents? That's the terminating question here in this presentation. It's about looking at all of this and saying, okay, at some point, I would put it this way, for your congregation to understand this in a more complete fashion, you would listen. Usually when I do things like this, there's always a music component. Why? Because you don't understand. I can tell you all this stuff, and it's hopefully intellectually stimulating and all that. There's nothing more effective, and I've seen this in too many places, except in Cuba or in Brazil, it becomes folkloric. This is not folklore. This is classical opera. It has dance, it has all the elements, and it's classical music. It's classical, not just, and because of the content and what the word classical means. So it addressed all of these primary issues.